There is the ones that would eat algae, and there's the ones that would eat the food that you put in the tank that falls to the bottom. They both do each, but some are better at it than others. Snails are really good at eating algae, and other fish would be really good at cleaning up the extra food that falls to the bottom of the tank. Now, if you're looking for a fish that's going to eat the poo of the other fish, that doesn't happen because you do that. You have to remove the poo yourself. Nothing's going to eat another fish's poo, generally. First thing I'm going to talk about is the ones that eat algae. And for that, I recommend snails. And also the great thing about snails is most fish ignore them. So the first snail is the nerite snail. And these snails are good algae eaters. And they also lay eggs, but they don't hatch, so you don't have to worry about them overpopulating. They come in many different color patterns, which could keep it a little interesting. You don't want to confuse it with the assassin snail. Assassin snails actually kill other snails and eat them, which could be useful if your tank is overrun by pest snails, but they do not perform well as a cleanup crew. It's an apple snail. These are larger snails and they are pretty decorative too. They aren't as effective algae eaters as nerite snails from what I've read, but they still do the job. They come in pretty different colors and they need to have a male and female in order to reproduce or have babies. And they don't overpopulate the tank like some snails do. One of these pest snails that you may encounter is the pond snail. Generally they eat plants, but if you don't have a planted tank, they shouldn't be a problem at all, as they'd probably be eating the leftover food and algae in your tank. There's also rash horn snails. Really subjective. Sometimes from what I've read they eat plants and sometimes they're fine. So some people leave them, some people don't like them because they do munch on their plants. But all these snails I said are good at eating algae. The snails I've listed do well in bare bottom tanks. Now the snail that won't do well in a bare bottom tank or as well, I'd say is the trumpet snail. Trumpet snails I'd recommend putting in a tank with sand. Mainly because they burrow, and this helps because in sand tanks lots of people get problems with toxic gases building up underneath the sand. Trumpet snails burrow. You won't have to worry about this as much, so they help keep the sand bed clean and prevent toxic gases from building up under the sand bed. Now if you have a planted tank with a dirt bottom, I won't really recommend these because they could dig up plants. Obviously this applies with sand too, but in sand it won't leave as much as a mess, and it's easy to replant plants in a sand bed. Also, trumpet snails do reproduce fairly rapidly if there's a lot of extra food in the tank. So some people hate them, some people like them because they might overpopulate the tank. They also do fine in gravel beds too. Snails, compared to a lot of other snails, people say are really hard to eradicate. So I believe they have a trap door based mechanism. It makes it hard for a lot of other things that eat snails to eat them. So usually they're last on their diet list, and they reproduce very fast if your tank sand bed is not clean or there's a lot of algae. Next I'll move on is to shrimp. Now shrimp you cannot have with aggressive fish or large fish as they will get eaten, but they do make for a decent cleanup crew. And shrimp could be very colorful. You have to do your research when choosing a fish for a cleanup crew because you really want to choose your fish based on the cleanup crew fish based on the type of fish you already have in your tank or planning to get in your tank, because they could be very small to very large. For example, if you wanted a algae eater for a large tank with large fish, you could get a common pleco. Now, common plecos also sometimes suck the slime coat off other fish. Though I've had a large pleco with goldfish and I haven't had this problem, but for some people it is a problem, so I would watch out for this. And a common pleco would be ideal because it's a large fish, it's hardy, and would be able to do this. Now, if you have a small tank and you're looking for a small algae-eating fish, the Salinous catfish is also a good choice if you have a small fish tank. They are very heavy algae eaters and they eat a lot of algae, so I recommend having a few in a planted tank. If you're looking for something more to just clean up the bottom of a tank, for a small tank, I'd recommend a cory catfish. Cory catfish are schooling fish, meaning you will need multiple of them, maybe 3 plus at least. And also the fact that cory catfish are better off in sand beds because other types of bottom materials could damage the fish's barbels, which is basically part of their mouth. So these fish thrive in sand beds. What's your favorite cleanup crew or bottom feeding fish? Let me know in the comments below.